I know you are upset that your project got ruined. My boyfriend Trevor gripped my wrist tightly, stopping me from calling for help. But if you make a big scene now, Coral's internship review will be totally ruined. You can't let the director think Coral has character issues and mess up her future. Right? Hearing this, a chill instantly spread from the bottom of my heart to my very bones. He didn't seem to realize yet that our external hard drives were the same model. The part that got ruined by the coffee isn't mine. It is his. "Oh my God, Brianna, I am sorry. I really didn't mean to," with a piercing scream. That paper cup printed with the Blue Bottle logo toppled over on my desk. The scalding oat latte was like a brown mudslide, instantly swallowing the silver lacy portable hard drive on the desktop that was reading and writing at high speed. In that instant, it was as if I heard the screams of millions of bytes wailing as they died in the short circuit. The screen flickered violently, followed immediately by that despair-inducing prompt popping up. "Disk not ejected properly. Data may be corrupted." I sat in my Herman Miller ergonomic chair, not even having time to reach out a hand to save it, forced to watch helplessly as that brown liquid seeped in along the seams of the metal casing. "What is going on?" Trevor, who had been in the conference room, rushed out. He was wearing that custom Zegna shirt I just gifted him last week. His blonde hair combed not a hair out of place, that typical Bay Area elite look. But the anxiety on his face right now wasn't for me. He immediately stepped over the coffee spill on the floor and held on to the culprit Coral, who was currently covering her mouth, eyes rimmed with red. "Did you burn your hand?" Trevor's voice was so gentle it felt like a stranger's to me. He grabbed Coral's hand and checked it over and over, and only after confirming there was no redness or swelling did he turn to look at the messy desk. When his gaze landed on that hard drive still dripping with coffee, his pupils contracted sharply. "Brianna, how can you be so careless, keeping a cup so close to electronic devices? Isn't that just basic common sense?" The first thing out of his mouth was an accusation. I looked up, staring in disbelief at this man I've loved for 5 years, and that pitiful family friend's sister in his arms. "Trevor, I think you need to get the situation straight." I tried to keep my voice calm, even though my fingertips were trembling slightly. It was Coral who ran over to joke around with me, gesticulating wildly, and knocked over the coffee. "Brianna, how could you say that?" Coral's voice instantly took on a crying tone, tears falling like beads from a broken string, acting skills worthy of a Hollywood Oscar. "I just wanted to ask you about the rendering parameters. I really didn't mean to. That hard drive, is it very important?" Trevor's protective instincts were clearly triggered by her tears. He frowned and interrupted me impatiently. "Enough, Brianna. She is just an intern, only 22. It is normal to be a bit clumsy. You are a senior architect. Why are you being so petty with a little girl?" He stepped forward, grabbed a few tissues, and roughly wiped the liquid off the surface of the hard drive, his tone stiff. "Besides, isn't this hard drive holding the final proposal for the London Partner Slot competition?" I looked at the silver metal brick in his hand, and my heart missed a beat. "Yes, we are both competing for the same senior partner track at the London headquarters. For this, we need to submit a highly classified bid proposal for the San Jose Federal Building. Since it involves government security levels, company rules strictly forbid uploading this project to the cloud. All data must be stored on encrypted physical hard drives, and Trevor and I use the exact same model of hard drive. Even the computer is the same model, a MacBook Pro, just 2 hours ago, because Trevor complained that his computer's graphics card kept overheating and crashing when running renders. I got soft-hearted and gave him my high-spec workstation, while I took his computer and hard drive to help him with some post-production texture calibration. The hard drive currently connected to the computer, although it was destroyed right here in my hands, isn't mine. It is Trevor's. Inside was the only master data worth millions of dollars that he had pulled all-nighters for 3 months to prepare for this bid. I just opened my mouth, wanting to tell him this devastating fact. "Don't panic," Trevor seemed to see what I wanted to say. He beat me to it, lowered his voice, and said in a warning tone that only the two of us could hear, "I know you want to call the IT department, but Brianna, think this through." He clamped down tight on my wrist as I tried to grab the internal phone, using enough force to make it hurt. "Tomorrow is Coral's internship review. If an IT ticket for damaging valuable company assets ends up on her record, she is completely done for in the San Francisco architecture scene. You know, her dad and my dad have been old friends for decades. I can't let her bear that stain." I froze, a chill shooting straight up from the soles of my feet to the crown of my head. So, I looked into his eyes, trying to find even a shred of concern for me. "What about my project? This is my career." Trevor avoided my gaze but didn't let go. "You are one of the best architects in the business, Brianna," he began buttering me up. That was his usual gaslighting tactic. "Even if you don't get this chance, you'll have opportunities next year, or the year after. You are strong, you handle pressure well. But Coral is different. She is too fragile. She can't take a blow like this." In that moment, the noisy background sounds of the office seemed to vanish. I could only hear the sound of my own heart breaking, not for this relationship, but for my 5 years of youth that had been fed to the dogs. He thought that was my hard drive, under the false impression that my future was ruined. His first reaction wasn't to help me save it, but to protect that scheming intern holding down my hand as I reached for help, forcing me to swallow this bitter pill in silence. I looked down at the hard drive port that was already thoroughly marinated in coffee. There was an extremely tiny scratch on it, one that Trevor had accidentally made at the construction site last week. That is right. This was his hard drive. The truth that had rushed to my lips was forcefully swallowed back down. I looked at Trevor's handsome yet incredibly ugly face and suddenly felt it was all so absurd and so laughable. God, since you want to play with fire, then I'll grant your wish. My silence was misunderstood by Trevor as a compromise. He let out a sigh of relief, his originally tense shoulders slumped, and his face resumed that "I knew you'd be sensible" expression. He even turned to comfort the still sobbing Coral. All right, stop crying. Brianna forgives you. This was just an accident. We won't report it to HR and the IT department." Coral stole a peek at me through her fingers, and in those big, seemingly innocent eyes, a trace of triumphant slyness flashed past quickly. "Really, thanks, Brianna. I knew you were the best." She smiled through her tears, and even tried to come up and take my hand. I turned sideways to avoid her touch, coldly pulled out a sanitizing wipe, and wiped the wrist that Trevor had just grabbed. I leaned back in my chair, my voice as calm as a pool of dead water. "Since you won't let me get it to recover the data, then what about my project? The deadline is midnight tonight." Trevor thought I had accepted the reality. He even showed a trace of guilt, that kind of high and mighty, charity-like guilt. "I know it is a shame, my dear. But as I said, you are overflowing with talent, and the partners at the firm all see it. This time, just treat it as giving a newcomer a chance." Then he said the words that made me completely sentence him to death. He glanced at the clock on the wall. It was 5 in the afternoon. "Anyway, your data is most likely unrecoverable. Once modern hard drives get water damage and short circuit, even a god can't save them. Since you are free now, instead of wasting time being sad here, why don't you help Coral polish up her internship portfolio?" I simply couldn't believe my ears, even suspecting that my anger was making me hear things. "What did you say?" I asked softly. Trevor spread his hands with self-righteous confidence. "Coral's portfolio layout has always had some issues, and it is due soon. Since you withdrew from the bidding, you happen to have an opening. This counts as guidance from a senior to a junior, right? Besides, if you help her, she'll remember your kindness and we can consider this whole incident over." I almost laughed out loud on the spot. My boyfriend, 5 minutes after thinking I lost my promotion opportunity, not only didn't offer a word of comfort, but actually wants me to use this opening to act as a ghostwriter for the culprit who ruined my hard work. And he wants me to act magnanimous just to exchange it for her gratitude. This isn't just selfishness anymore. This is throwing my dignity on the ground, then stomping on it and crushing it. If I still had a shred of hesitation a second ago about whether to tell him the truth, then in this moment, that hesitation is turned to ashes. I stared at that hard drive on the table, which was still soaking wet. That was his life, the thing he'd rushed to finish over these last few months without sleep or rest, even ignoring my birthday. Inside were not only the bidding documents, but also some private client data he'd secretly stashed away to guard against me. If I tell him now, he'll rush to the IT department like a madman and might even throw Coral under the bus just to salvage the data, number that would be letting him off too easy. I want to make him think he is won. I want him to carry that victor's arrogance all the way to the edge of the cliff, and then at the very last second, watch himself smash into pieces. I took a deep breath, squeezing a weary and submissive smile onto my face. "You are right, Trevor." I saw the surprise in Trevor's eyes. He seemed not to expect that I'd be tamed so quickly. "I am a senior architect. I shouldn't be bickering with an intern. Since it has already happened, instead of crying and making a scene, it is better to look forward." I stood up and very naturally unplugged that ruined hard drive of his from the computer. "I'll put this broken hard drive away for now. It annoys me just looking at it." I casually tossed it into the side pocket of Trevor's briefcase sitting on the chair nearby. The movement was understated, just like throwing away a piece of scrap paper. As for Coral's portfolio, I glanced at the girl whose face was full of anticipation. Send it to my email. But I am not in a good mood right now and need to go home to get some peace and quiet. I'll look at it later. Trevor was obviously extremely satisfied with this outcome. He walked over wanting to hug me, but I diffused the situation by subtly dodging him with the movement of reaching for my bag. That is the way, babe. I knew you were the most sensible one. Trevor's voice held a lightness that comes with relief. You go home and rest first. To thank you for being so big-hearted, I am taking Coral out for a drink tonight at that new bar in the Mission District, just to calm her down a bit. After all, the poor girl was scared out of her wits. I'll bring back your favorite sushi later, okay? Look at that, what a perfect excuse. To comfort the perpetrator while dumping the victim back home all alone. No need. I picked up my handbag, which contained my own MacBook Air, as well as the real bidding proposal I had long since backed up to my private encrypted cloud. You guys have fun. I didn't even look back at them once as I walked straight to the elevator. The moment the elevator doors closed, I saw Trevor smiling and patting Coral's head through the reflection on the stainless steel door panel. The atmosphere between them was flirty and cheerful. Laugh all you want, Trevor. Your happiness has a shelf life of less than 7 hours. San Francisco nights always carry a bone. Chilling cold, the fog spreads over from the direction of the Golden Gate Bridge, swallowing the entire city. Back at the luxury apartment I rented in the Soma district, I didn't turn on the lights. Outside the window, the lights from Salesforce Tower were like a giant lightsaber piercing the night sky, illuminating my empty living room. We rented this apartment together, but I paid 70% of the rent because Trevor always said his money had to be used for investing, for socializing, for maintaining that glamorous persona of his. I glanced at my phone. In my moments, Coral had just posted an update. The photo shows 2 cocktail glasses clinking together, set against dim, suggestive bar lighting. A corner of Trevor's wrist is visible, wearing the green Rolex Submariner I gave him. The caption reads, "Thanks, brother Trevor, for always protecting me. Even though I messed up today, it feels so good to have someone backing me up." She didn't block me, or maybe she posted it on purpose for me to see. I swiped past the screen expressionlessly and tapped open the work collaboration app. It is 7:30 p.m. There is still 4.5 hours until the final submission deadline. I opened my personal computer and logged into that backup submission portal that only a very few senior partners know about. Actually, what Trevor doesn't know is that I've never completely trusted that physical hard drive. Although company rules forbid using public clouds, I set up a private NAS server at home myself, and every edit I make gets synced back in real time. This afternoon at the office, the reason I used his computer was purely because my workstation was running an ultra-high precision render, hogging all the resources. I took his computer just to check some PDF documents and reference materials. Who would have thought that this momentary switch would turn out to be a scalpel handed to me by God? I poured myself a glass of ice water, sat down in front of the floor-to-ceiling window, and started the final check. My proposal was flawless. Every line, every bit of light and shadow embodied my 5 years of experience and talent. 9 o'clock. I submitted the proposal. The progress bar slowly reached the end, and the green word "success" popped up on the screen. I closed my laptop, stood up, and started packing. I didn't plan on waiting here for him to come back and act out some melodrama. I took out the suitcase I'd had ready for a while. The truth is, the thought of breaking up didn't just start today. Trevor's arrogance, double standards, and that subtle Pua nonsense had been eating away at my patience like a slow-acting poison. The coffee incident today was just the straw that broke the camel's back, or rather, the slap in the face that finally woke me up. I only took the valuables that belonged to me: passport, documents, jewelry, and all the electronic devices I bought. As for those clothes and furniture, I left them all to him. Just consider it my contribution to his funeral. 11 o'clock. After packing everything up, I sat on the chair in the entryway, waiting quietly. A sound came from the door lock. Trevor came back, reeking of alcohol and perfume. It was Coral's usual Monday Paris, cloyingly sweet enough to make me puke. "Babe, why didn't you turn on the light?" Trevor turned on the living room light and froze for a second when he saw me sitting in the entryway with a suitcase by my feet. Coral wasn't by his side right now. Looks like he only came back after dropping his little sister home. "You going on a business trip?" Trevor loosened his tie, his face sporting that flush and excitement from drinking. "I've got good news for you. Coral's feeling much better. She said she'll come apologize to you personally tomorrow. By the way, how is the editing on her portfolio going? It needs to be turned in first thing tomorrow morning." I looked at him like I was looking at a clown. I stood up, pointing at the briefcase he was still clutching tightly in his hand. Don't you want to take a look at your hard drive? Trevor frowned, looking totally confused. What do you mean? That broken hard drive? Why, look at that. It is bad luck. No, I smiled. A smile that must have been colder than the fog in San Francisco. I mean, you should take a close look at that hard drive, especially the back of it. Trevor was baffled by my weird attitude. He muttered, "What are you going crazy about?" while impatiently unzipping the briefcase, reaching in to fish out that metal block still stained with coffee. At that moment, the wall clock pointed exactly to 11:58. 2 minutes left, and the submission portal for the government bid would close for good. Trevor took out the hard drive. It was a silver lacy, rugged SSD. He flipped it over and glanced at the back. In the spot that should have been empty, or stuck with a company asset tag, there was now a line of tiny laser-engraved text. It was something he'd paid extra to have customized, just to show off his individuality. Property of E. Miller, master architect. Trevor's movements froze. His pupils dilated to the max in an instant. Looking like two dry wells, he sobered up completely in a split second, his face draining of color right before my eyes, going from rosy to ghastly pale, and finally to a deathly ashen gray. "Thursday this is..." His voice was shaking like a leaf in the wind. He snapped his head up to look at me, his eyes filled with a fear like never before. "Brianna, is this my hard drive?" I raised my wrist and checked my watch. "Yes, Trevor, that is your hard drive. Inside are the final renders for your San Jose project, all your source files, and your life for the last 3 months. Oh, by the way," under his gaze of sheer terror, I softly delivered the final verdict. "It is 11:59 right now. If you run fast enough, maybe you can still make the deadline in your dreams." "Number, that is impossible. That is impossible." Trevor let out a screech like a strangled rooster. The hard drive in his hand hit the floor with a clatter. But he didn't even bother picking it up. Instead, he lunged at my desk like a madman, grabbed my MacBook Air and tried to turn it on. "Password, Brianna. What is the password?" He roared at me, spittle flying everywhere, that handsome face now twisted like a demon. I stood my ground, arms crossed, calmly watching him go mad. "You don't have access, Trevor. What kind of bullshit are you talking about? Unlock it for me right now. I need to log into my private cloud. I have backups. I have backups." His fingers trembled as he frantically mashed the keyboard, trying to brute force my login password, but the screen coldly displayed incorrect password. "Please try again. Did you forget?" I kindly reminded him. "To prevent the leakage of company secrets, the private cloud for government projects can only be accessed via bound hardware MAC addresses. And that computer you bound," I pointed at the MacBook Pro in his briefcase that he hadn't even taken out yet. "That computer's graphics card is broken. It won't even turn on. And all your local data is in that." My gaze swept toward the metal brick on the floor that was still emitting the sickly sweet smell of oat milk latte. "In that hard drive your dear Coral fed coffee to." Trevor looked like he had been struck by lightning. He stiffly turned his head, staring dead at the hard drive on the floor. At this moment, the wall clock made a soft click. The minute hand and hour hand overlapped, just like two guillotine blades falling. 0 o'clock, a new day began. The bidding channel closed. Trevor's legs gave way, and he actually knelt directly on the ground. He picked up that hard drive with trembling hands, cradling it like some rare treasure, desperately wiping the stains off it with his sleeve, muttering neurotically, "It is okay. It can still be fixed. Surely it can still be fixed. It department, right? It department." He shot up from the ground, grabbed his phone, and was about to dial. "Don't waste your breath." I picked up my suitcase and stepped over his crumbling form. "Once this kind of lacy SSD gets water damage and shorts out, the controller chip gets fried, unless you have $50,000 in 2 months to send it back to the factory for recovery. The data inside is just a pile of gibberish." $50,000 2 months, Trevor muttered to himself, his eyes vacant. "The bidding will be long over by then." "It is over. It is all over." Suddenly, as if remembering something, he lunged over and grabbed my ankle. "Brianna, what about your files? Your files are still there, right? Our proposals have a lot of similarities. Give yours to me. Give me your source files. I can change the name right now and still submit it. Just need to apply for a 10-minute extension through the special channel. I have a way." Looking at this man kneeling at my feet, begging like a stray dog, I felt nothing but pure disgust. "Give you mine?" I looked down at him. "Why should I? We're a couple. What is mine is yours, and what is yours is mine. Besides, I only didn't find out in time because I was protecting Coral. You are the older sister. You should be understanding. Even at a time like this, he was actually still using that logic. "Trevor," I interrupted him. My voice as cold as ice. "You seem to have gotten one thing wrong. The moment you said, 'help Coral with the designs,' we were no longer a couple." I yanked my leg back hard and patted my pant leg in disgust. "As for being understanding, didn't you say having the project ruined was no big deal? Didn't you say I was strong and could just try again next year? I am returning those exact words to you now. Good luck, Trevor. I believe that with your talent, you'll definitely have another chance next year." With that, I pulled the door open without looking back and walked out into the cold wind of the San Francisco night. The sound of shattering glass came from behind, followed by Trevor's desperate scream, "Brianna, you bitch." After leaving the apartment, I took a cab straight to the Four Seasons. Lying in the soft, large bed of the five-star hotel, I thought I would suffer from insomnia, but I slept more soundly than I had on any day in the past 5 years. Early the next morning, I was woken up by the vibration of my phone. Dozens of missed calls, all from Trevor. There were also over a dozen voicemails and a bombardment of countless WeChat messages and iMessages. I didn't listen to a single one. I just blocked him immediately, but I didn't turn off my phone because I was waiting for another call. At 10 in the morning, the phone rang right on time. It was a call from Sarah, the firm's HR director. "Brianna, congratulations." Sarah's voice sounded a bit excited. "Your proposal is simply perfect. The partners at the London headquarters held a meeting overnight, and they are very interested in your vertical eco-city concept. If nothing unexpected happens, that senior partner spot is yours." "Thanks, Sarah," I replied calmly, without much of a ripple in my heart because this was what I deserved. "By the way," Sarah changed the subject, her tone becoming somewhat subtle. "Trevor didn't come to work today and he didn't request leave either. And the IT department reported that he tried to remotely attack the company server last night to upload files, triggering a firewall alert." "Do you know what happened?" The corners of my mouth curled up. It seemed that the madness from last night wasn't over yet. "I am not clear." "Sarah, I broke up with him yesterday," I said indifferently. "However, regarding last night, I think I have an obligation to report a situation to the company. This might involve damage to company assets and data security risks." "What?" Sarah's tone instantly became serious. "Yesterday afternoon, the intern Coral destroyed a hard drive containing highly confidential bidding data by spilling coffee on it while fooling around in the office area. Trevor was there, but to cover up Coral's mistake, he stopped it from being reported to the IT department and tried to handle it privately." There was silence for a few seconds on the other end of the line. In a major American corporation that places high value on compliance, this kind of behavior isn't just a violation, it is practically dancing in a minefield. "Do you have evidence, Brianna?" "Of course the office has surveillance. Plus, that damaged hard drive is still in Trevor's hands. If you inspect it, you'll find the liquid residue and the timing of the physical damage match the surveillance footage perfectly. Also stored on that hard drive was the sole backup of the San Jose project Trevor is responsible for." "Jesus Christ," Sarah cursed under her breath. "Concealing a major accident and causing a project default." "Okay, Brianna, thank you for your honesty. This is very serious. We will launch an internal investigation immediately." Hanging up the phone, I walked to the floor-to-ceiling window and looked out at the busy streets of San Francisco. Trevor wanted to protect Coral's internship record. Now, not only am I going to ruin Coral's record, but I am also going to bury Trevor's career along with it, covering it up, causing the loss of major trade secrets, triggering firewall alerts. After this combo, Trevor isn't just facing termination. He is likely to be saddled with massive debt from breach penalties and might even be completely blacklisted from the entire California architecture industry. This is what adult revenge looks like. No screaming, no shouting, just directly destroying your livelihood. At 2 in the afternoon, I went back to the company to handle some handover procedures. As soon as I walked through the office doors, I felt the atmosphere was incredibly eerie. The usually noisy design department was so quiet right now, you could hear a pin drop. Everyone's eyes were drifting subtly toward Trevor's office. That glass door was shut tight, but through the cracks in the blinds you could see a few figures standing inside. That was the legal department and its security folks. I walked to my desk like nothing was up and started packing my things. Before long, the door to Trevor's office opened. He walked out looking completely broken, still wearing that crumpled shirt from yesterday. Eyes sunken, face covered in stubble. He looked like he'd aged 10 years. Following behind him were 2 legal staff, holding cardboard boxes stuffed with his personal belongings. This is the so-called garden leave, or to be more blunt, fired on the spot. When he saw me, a vicious glint suddenly burst from his dead eyes. He tried to charge over but was stopped by the security guard next to him. "Brianna, did you have to be so ruthless?" He roared, his voice hoarse and grating. "What did you tell Hachar? Why did you ruin me?" His roar drew stares from the entire company. I stopped packing, turned around, and looked at him with a smile. "Trevor, it wasn't me who ruined you." I pointed at the figure curled up in a ball and shivering at the desk not far away. "It was your good little sister and your own arrogance." Hearing this, Coral, who had been trying to act invisible, suddenly looked up. Seeing the wretched state of Trevor being dragged away by security, she finally realized that the fire had spread to her. She came stumbling over, grabbed my arm, and cried her eyes out. "Brianna, please, please help Trevor. Go explain to HR, just say the hard drive broke on its own, not because of the coffee spill. As long as you withdraw the complaint, Trevor can still be saved." You see, even at this very moment, she was still thinking about making me lie. I looked down at her exquisite yet hypocritical face and gently pushed her hand away. "Coral, as an adult, the first lesson is learning to pay for your own actions. Also," I leaned close to her ear, saying in a voice only the three of us could hear, "that cup of coffee yesterday was really expensive. It is worth about $2 million in penalty fees, plus Trevor's future for the next 10 years. Since you like calling him brother so much, then you two can take your time paying off this debt together." Coral's face instantly lost all color, and she slumped to the ground. When Trevor heard the figure $2 million in damages, his pupils shook violently. He clearly hadn't realized the severity of the matter had reached this stage. Because the sole copy of the data was lost, the firm couldn't fulfill its obligation to the government. And the punitive damages in the contract were astronomical. Although the company would bear most of it, as the person directly responsible, and given the deliberate concealment, the company would absolutely sue him for recovery. "Take him away," the legal supervisor coldly ordered the security guards. Trevor was dragged away. As he passed me, he stared fixedly at me. There was hate in that look and regret, but mostly a kind of disbelief. He couldn't believe that the Brianna who used to follow his every whim could actually send him to hell with her own hands. I just watched him leave calmly, like watching a bag of trash get tossed into the recycling bin. A deathly silence returned to the office, but I knew my new chapter was just beginning. The news of Trevor's firing burned through the entire San Francisco architecture circle like wildfire. In this circle, a bad reputation spreads faster than a virus, especially a scandal at the level of losing major government project data due to personal negligence and attempting to hide it. It basically amounted to a death sentence. As for Coral, she didn't even make it to the end of her internship. HR not only immediately terminated her internship contract, but also objectively and coldly recorded the fact of serious violation of safety regulations, resulting in major asset loss in her termination letter, and background check notes. For a student who hasn't even graduated yet, this means she has been blacklisted by every top-tier firm in the entire Bay Area. But I didn't have much time to care about the fate of these losers. For the next 2 weeks, I was swamped. The appointment letter from the London headquarters arrived quickly, followed by the tedious process of getting a visa, breaking my lease, and handing over my work. The day before I left San Francisco, I received an email with a lawyer's letter attached. It wasn't addressed to me, but CC'd to me as a witness. The firm formally sued Trevor to recover damages for breach of contract caused by his gross negligence, with the initial claim amounting to as much as $500,000. And as a jointly liable party, Coral was listed as the second defendant, even though she most likely can't afford to pay. This is enough to completely overwhelm her parents, who are still dreaming their middle-class dreams. I heard Trevor's parents sold an investment property in Palo Alto to help him cover the losses, while Coral's family completely turned against Trevor's family. Coral's mother caused a huge scene outside the company building, accusing Trevor of failing to manage his intern properly as a supervisor, and even leaked private, flirtatious chat logs between the two, attempting to prove that this was retaliation following workplace sexual harassment in order to shift the blame. Family friends who were once inseparable are now tearing each other to pieces over a few subpoenas, ending up with mouths full of fur. This dog-eat-dog drama served as the perfect farewell toast for my departure. Sitting in the first-class lounge bound for London, I looked at this email and felt absolutely no sympathy. In fact, I felt it wasn't enough, because I knew that if I hadn't held a card back that day, if that hard drive had actually been mine, then the one struggling to survive in that quagmire, getting dragged through the mud and saddled with massive debt, would have been me. Kindness needs to have an edge, or else it is just weakness. And my edge is to make sure they are ruined beyond redemption. 3 years later, the rain in London always falls in such a lingering way, but I've gotten used to the damp air and the fast-paced life here. Over these 3 years, the vertical eco-city project I helped design was not only successfully realized, but also garnered a nomination for that year's Pritzker Architecture Prize. I also naturally became the firm's youngest Asian female partner. I have my own team, my own apartment by the Thames, and a new suitor, a dashing British financial lawyer. He respects my career, never interferes with my decisions, and certainly wouldn't ask me to help edit documents for some sister. As for news about Trevor and Coral, I only hear bits and pieces occasionally from former colleagues still in San Francisco. I heard Trevor lost badly in that lawsuit, not only wiping out his savings but also getting a stain on his credit. No legitimate firm dared to hire him, so he could only work as a draftsman for some unknown little renovation companies, making 1/10 of his previous salary and spending every day bickering with foremen on dusty construction sites. As for Coral, it seems she went back to her hometown, hastily found someone to marry, and said goodbye to the architecture industry for good. I thought that was the end of the story. Until last month, when the firm decided to send me back to the San Francisco branch for a month-long inspection to expand our North American business. When I set foot on this familiar land again and watched the Golden Gate Bridge drifting in and out of sight in the fog, I surprisingly didn't feel a ripple of emotion. The city that once broke my heart and filled me with rage was now just a colorful postcard. The executive car picking me up was a new Mercedes S-Class, and the driver respectfully held the door open for me. The car drove to Market Street and stopped at a traffic light. "There are getting to be more and more homeless people here," the driver complained. I absent-mindedly turned my head to look out the window. Most of the roadside shops had closed down, and only a few were still open. In front of a shop that was being renovated, a person was braving the scorching sun, struggling to paste a cheap promotional poster on the wall. That was a man wearing a fluorescent yellow vest, his figure a bit pudgy and out of shape, his originally thick blonde hair now quite sparse, his hairline receding badly. He carried a paste bucket in one hand and a brush in the other, his head covered in sweat, his movements clumsy. But I still recognized that profile at a glance. Trevor, the Trevor who once wouldn't wear anything but bespoke suits, wouldn't enter anything but Michelin restaurants, and considered himself God's favored son. To think that now he has actually been reduced to doing this kind of manual labor on the streets. As if sensing a gaze, he straightened up, wiped off his sweat, and subconsciously looked over this way. In that instant, our gazes met through the black privacy windows. Of course he couldn't see me. He could only see a luxury car stopped in front of him, reflecting his currently wretched image. But he seemed to sense something, staring blankly at the car window, a trace of confusion and stinging pain flashing through his originally cloudy eyes. The light turned green. The car started smoothly, quickly leaving that yellow figure behind, turning into a blurry little dot, and finally disappearing in the rearview mirror. I withdrew my gaze, lowered my head to straighten the impeccably tailored Chanel suit I was wearing, and said to the assistant beside me, "About the meeting this afternoon. Let me see the budget report for that new project again." "Okay, Brianna." In that moment I felt no thrill of revenge nor any sentiment. It was just like brushing a speck of dust off my cuff. I completely wiped him from my memory. On the night before I was about to finish my inspection and return to London, I was stopped in the hotel lobby. It was Trevor. I don't know where he found out where I was staying. He looked even more down and out now than when I saw him on the street that day. That ill-fitting suit was obviously an old style from a few years ago. The cuffs were frayed, and the tie was tied crookedly. "Brianna," he called my name, his voice carrying an uncomfortable sort of ingratiation and servility. The security guards were just about to step forward to drive him away, but I raised my hand, signaling them to wait. I wanted to hear what kind of nonsense he could come up with after 3 years. "Brianna, I saw the news. Congratulations, a Pritzker nomination. That is really amazing." He rubbed his hands together, his eyes shifting, afraid to look me in the eye. I've been a bit tight on cash lately. You know, that penalty fee from back then. I am still paying off the debt. Could you?" I raised my eyebrows. So he wasn't here to repent. He was here to borrow money. "Could you lend me some money? Or isn't your company hiring recently? Even a junior draftsman position would be fine. You know my abilities, just give me a chance." "Your abilities?" I finally spoke, my voice carrying a faint trace of mockery. "Trevor, your competence drowned in that latte 3 years ago. Now you aren't even qualified to be my assistant's assistant." Trevor's face turned a deep purple. That pathetic bit of pride seemed to be acting up again, but he didn't dare flare up, so he just had to force it down. "Brianna, You can't be so heartless. If it wasn't for you not reminding me back then that that was my hard drive, I wouldn't have. Stop. I cut him off coldly. Even today, you are still blaming others. Trevor, it was you who chose to protect that manipulative bitch. It was you who chose to ignore my feelings. And it was you who personally threw the hard drive holding your future into the trash heap. I took a step closer, looking into his eyes. You know what? That night, if you had felt even a shred of heartache over my project being ruined for just 1 second, instead of rushing to make me ghostwrite for Coral, I might have actually softened up and told you the truth. It was you who killed yourself, Trevor, just like Narcissus in that Greek myth drowning in his own reflection. After saying that, I turned and nodded to the security guard. I don't know this person. Please ask him to leave. Brianna, you can't do this. I love you. I really regret it. Trevor's desperate screams came from behind me, quickly drowned out by the sound of dragging. I walked into the elevator and pressed the button for the top floor. The elevator doors slowly closed, completely shutting out that noisy, filthy, regret-filled past. The weekend I returned to London just happened to be my 30th birthday. My boyfriend had booked a dinner for me at the restaurant on the top floor of the Shard. Outside the window was the glittering night view of the whole of London, the River Thames like a flowing golden belt winding through this ancient yet modern city. Happy birthday, Brianna. My boyfriend took out an exquisite velvet box. Inside lay a diamond ring that was simple in design yet not showy. He didn't get down on one knee for that kind of awkward proposal ceremony, just looked at me with a smile, his eyes filled with respect and love. This is a birthday present for you, and also an invitation. If you are willing, we can explore the next 10 years together. If you are not ready yet, it can also just be a nice-looking ring. I looked at him, then looked out the window at the infinitely vast world. 3 years ago, on that late night in San Francisco, I dragged my suitcase and fled that suffocating apartment, thinking I had lost everything, and now I have a life that truly belongs to me. I picked up that ring and put it on my middle finger. It meant that I was happy now and full of strength. Thanks, I smiled and raised my glass. To the next 10 years. My phone vibrated. It was a gossip message from a former colleague. Heard Trevor got sued for cutting corners at the construction site. He might have to go in for a few years this time. Serves him right. I glanced at it, then clicked delete and cleared all the chat history while I was at it. Some people are destined to be just background noise in your life. When the movement reaches its climax, that noise will naturally be drowned out by the grand symphony. I turned my head to look out the window. The night was gentle, and the stars were shining bright. Those that do not kill you will eventually crown you king.